And I'm recording. Okay. So this is from the Prodigal Son, which is Luke 15, 11 through, I think, 32. So it's kind of a long read, but it's a story you're probably very familiar with. So all that being said, this is the word of God. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses," and other translations say when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son or child. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against you and heaven, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field, and when he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' And the older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him, but he answered his father, 'Look, all of these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again, and he was lost and is found.'" The word of God for the people of God. God, you are the God of the feast, one who feeds, one who meets needs, and we hunger for you. Bring us home to you. Cherish us, celebrate us. Show us our goodness in a world that confuses us. And remind us how much you love us. I wanted to eat the food they fed to the pigs. That's how bad it got. And at the time, I couldn't have told you that. Starvation gives you a higher threshold. Hunger becomes a normal part of living, and so does losing everything. That was what made this kind of living wild. It wasn't the prostitution. It wasn't recklessly losing a fortune. It was all the places my mind went to survive. When you squander away that last piece of gold, when you eat that last morsel of food, you begin to have a need that you can't meet on your own. It starts slow, and then it grows, and you feel your body grown in ways you never thought you'd have to know. You start to think that you belong at the trough, eating crumbs with swine. It's the kind of thought that makes it possible to accept the unacceptable. But then they tell you, you can't have any. I didn't know what to do with that. I couldn't think my way around it. Pigs ate before me. I couldn't make it better than it seemed. And that was my rock bottom. The place where I had to reckon with myself and feel all of the things. Shame and guilt and regret. I came to my senses because I ran out of defense mechanisms to deny that I had any. I had to eat, and I had to honor my need. And I screamed, how many of my father's hired men have food to spare, and here I am, starving to death. It was the first accurate thought I had in years. And it made me realize how far I was from where I should be. Give me my share, I told my father long ago. We were living in strange times when a man named Jesus was doing all sorts of things. He was welcoming the tax collector and eating with the sinner. And the teachers of the law, the religious authorities of our time, didn't know what to do with him. They memorized a different Messiah, interpreted a different Shekinah, or at least they thought they did. So they watched him with an unrelenting eye, and they always questioned him. If you are the Son of God, holy and without blemish, how can you sit with them? How can you let the dead near your life? How can you let the lost be found? They aren't like us, and they aren't like you. How is this what you have come to do? And he'd just look at them. He'd look at the teachers and tell them all sorts of stories that honored the law, but allowed people to come out from under it. He'd rewrite their script, and sinners and saints all alike would come out from under the crushing weight of perfection and out from under the utter shame of not being holy. He'd set them free. And I never thought one of those stories would be about me. But again, long ago, I told my father, give me my share. Show me how much you love me. Quantify it for me. Lay it out in gold. And it put him in a miserable position. This was something he was supposed to do when he was close to death. And I had grown wise enough to know that my father's love for me didn't have a number. It wasn't molded into a vase. It was never meant to be encased. But he granted my request, and I left. I can't tell you why I walked away from him. I was lost, and when someone is lost, it should be assumed that they don't have a clue why they do the things they do. And what happened next isn't easy to look at. I took his love and emptied myself of it because I knew I wasn't worthy of it. I starved to the point where my ribs were carved by the layers of my skin. How could I be anyone's kin, let alone his? I was so hungry, and I knew he had food. He always had enough to spare. I remembered the crumbs falling everywhere. So I went home. I just wanted to be hired help. I just wanted to take my place at the trough and eat. But he ran to me. He had such speed. He'd been searching for me. Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your child. It was like he didn't hear me. There was a hug and a kiss. I didn't understand this. I'd taken all of his love and gotten rid of it, hadn't I? Quick, bring the best robe, put a ring on this child's finger and sandals on this child's feet. I told you earlier that my mind had led me to believe horrible things. To this day, I believe my father knew this. because he met me where I was. He put the robe around me. He gave me his ring. He strapped sandals on my feet as if to say, it's okay to have need. It's okay to join me in the feast, put on the robe and come and eat. And he asked that of me. And now I ask that of you, my brother and my sister. Will you come and eat? Amen.